Hello, I'm Max, a Youth Climate Summit ambassador. For today's careers conversations, YCS ambassadors and London School's Eco Network members Alina, Lorenza, Lucie, Aadarsh and Andra interview a diverse range of sustainability professionals from Riverford Organics, RWE Renewables, design and consulting company Stantec, the People Power Collective, Giki Carbon Footprint app, and the COP26 Climate Champions Team, as well as a UCL PhD student researching batteries and a teacher from Green School Bali.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this Youth Climate Summit 2020 Careers Conversation. I'm Dr. Jessica Tipton, a secondary teacher of languages and founder of the London School's Eco Network, and I will be your host this lunchtime. For this session, we have Youth Climate Summit ambassadors Alina and Lorenza, who are interviewing 4 sustainability professionals working in very different fields. We have Joe Hand, who is co-founder of Giki. We then have Ed Scott, Assistant Harvest Manager at Riverford Organic Farmers. We have Bernie Mazza, Director of People Power, and Becky Shutt, who's a PhD student at UCL. So if I could first invite each of our panelists to give a brief introduction to their current role and how they got into it, starting with Joe.
Hi there, it's really nice to be here. So I set up Giki, which stands for Get Informed, Know Your Impact, in 2017 with my husband. And we set it up because it became increasingly clear that very few of us want climate change or pollution or habitat loss and animals being threatened with extinction. And most people want to do the right thing, but actually knowing what the right thing is really difficult. So we thought if we can help people understand what their environmental impacts are and then find ways to reduce them across our entire lifestyle, across everything that we have direct control over, then we could really make a difference. And that was why we started Giki.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe. And now, Ed.
Yeah, hi there, my name's Ed. I'm Assistant Harvest Manager at Riverford Organic Farmers, and we deliver organic veg boxes and a few associated sundries throughout most of England and a bit of Wales now, about 80,000 households a week, I think. Yeah, I started at Riverford purely by chance, actually. I needed a job near to where I lived, and I got a summer job here. And that was 17 years ago, so it obviously really caught me. I knew a bit about organics at the time, but yeah, working outside and working with soil and things, you just can't help but yeah, become passionate about that sort of thing.
Fantastic. And Bernie.
Hello, I'm Bernie Mazza. I come from background engineering, and I started working in an environmental consultancy back in Mexico, doing a lot of environmental impact assessments and other kind of works related to that. And when I came to London, I found this collective called People Power that they were on their first year of operation, and I helped them structure the company and like broaden the scope of actually taking sustainability to the hands of people. So we participate a lot in academic first and in music festivals, basically showcasing cool and new innovative ways of taking sustainability in people's hands and developing cool workshops in schools and many other more stuff.
Amazing. And Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky. I'm a PhD student at UCL and Imperial College London. And my research is in batteries, so things kind of powering your phones and watches. And I got into it because I did chemistry as a degree, and I wanted to think about a way in which I could apply it to working towards sustainable futures. And one thing that I kind of saw was that to transition effectively towards renewable energy sources and away from fossil fuels, we sort of needed to solve the problem of that the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And batteries can be a solution to that because they convert electrical energy to chemical energy and store it as chemical energy. So what you can do is store all that energy when the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, and then when those renewable energy sources die down, you can then draw on the batteries where it's stored and keep powering the cities and things. So that's what I do.
Wonderful. Gosh, amazing, diverse array of things everybody's working on this panel. This is brilliant. So I'm going to hand over and see if Alina has a first question for Jo.
Hi, Jo. I was wondering what made you decide to create Giki, which helps people find more sustainable and healthy products in the supermarket, and how and has your job been rewarding?
Hi there. That's a very good question. I would say I'm really, really fortunate in my career that all of my jobs have been very rewarding. I'm very lucky in that way. But I would say that Giki has been by far the most rewarding because we saw that there was a real gap between public concern around, it might be climate change, it might be the loss of nature, it might be concern that, you know, certain British species are becoming endangered, it might be worry about species on the other side of the world. There are loads and loads of different environmental issues at the moment, and most people are, when you talk to them about them, you know, plastics is another really good example, genuinely care. But inherent in our lifestyles today is the impact that we have on the environment, you know, through every time we spend our money, what we choose to eat, what we choose to buy. And we felt that if we could close that gap and connect what's dear to people, what we care about and what we love, and protecting that with how we behave in terms of what we buy and how we spend our money, then it could help move towards a more sustainable world, more sustainable planet, more sustainable lifestyle. So that was why we started it. And yeah, it's massively rewarding. There's lots to do, but I'm optimistic. People want to change, people want to protect our planet, and I think we can do it.
Yeah, we can. And Lorenza, have you got a first question for Ed?
Yes, hi Ed. My question is, how do you feel when you hear the words climate change, and do you think the UK is on track right now to tackle climate change?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, well, concern doesn't really cover it. I mean, you know, climate change is all very well, but it's beyond that now. We're at, you know, climate catastrophe, and we've got extinction events going on, and you know, it just doesn't do it justice. You know, so are we on track? I'd say no. You know, there's a brilliant willingness at the ground level, but you know, I believe, I mean, government is really dragging its feet and behaving appallingly. There's so much more they could do. We as individuals and we as business, there's an awful lot we can do, but without, you know, sort of help or guidance, then it becomes much harder. I mean, I think it is fantastic. We really all need to be involved, and every little thing that anyone can do will make a difference. But yeah, we are just individuals at the end of the day, and we need that sort of you know, Extinction Rebellion's aims are really admirable in just trying to, you know, activate it and make people realise the seriousness of it. So, but yeah, in short, you know, there's hope. There's always hope, but I don't think we're on track at the moment.
Well, hopefully we're all coming together for this summit. Will be a good step on the road. And Alina, for Bernie.
What are People Power's goals for the next 10 to 20 years?
Thank you, Alina. Well, People Power started as a collective, and I think we wanted to share knowledge, but over the last year or so, we have started being more community oriented. We really believe that grassroots movements are the way to go. I do consider, as I just mentioned, you know, like we as individuals and as communities can be accountable to make sure that we go to greener pathways in the future, considering next generations, considering all the technology that is coming available for us. So what we want to do is act more as a community to reach those goals, to reach more people, to make sure that everybody knows, as Joe was also saying, like receive like fair information, actionable information that actually can promote a collective ripple effect that will make everyone like hop on the sustainability train. And I think our aim is doing it from the most human side of it, that it means like building bridges among people to make sure that we can reach that.
And finally, for our opening introductions, if Lorenza could put a question to Becky.
Hi, Becky. My question is, do you have any advice for people who are wanting to go into your industry of like sustainable energy?
Thank you for your question, Lorenza. I think it's a really good one. I think there are lots of avenues and there are lots of different kinds of people that we need in the energy industry. And so I think taking some of the best advice might be just taking some time to like have a look into how energy works in the UK and how it's distributed and where all these different roles could come in. So as a few examples, you could work in research like I do, which is very much trying to look for new materials and new ways of doing things that would then hopefully finding something that will make the next shift in order to make some big changes and commercialize. Or you could train as an engineer and work in like for one of the renewable energy companies and be more on the side of like energy generation. So like looking at photovoltaics or wind. And then there's also the question of distribution. So ideally, we want everyone to have access to energy that is secure, so it's always there and safe and is low cost, so that everyone can have their lights switched on. So there are quite a few, because in the UK we have a national grid which sorts like powers all of the homes, but there are a few kind of what would I call them? It's like kind of maybe like a grassroots like organizations or collectives that are trying to think about having energy rather than being from like the top down, being kind of owned and distributed locally. So there's quite a few interesting different ways to get involved in. It could be on like the more engineering and scientific side, or it could be more on the social side of like how best do we get energy to everyone in like the most sustainable but also like the safe and cheapest way as well.
Brilliant. If I could now ask Alina and then Lorenza to say a little bit about themselves and then see if they have maybe some specific questions for someone on the panel. So if we start with Alina.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Alina, I'm 16 and I'm from London. I take the IB and my favorite subjects are biology, geography and economics. I would love to study environmental science later on at university and maybe go into a career about marine biology and sustainability. Becky, I had a question for you. So your job sounds super interesting. I was wondering what you do on a day-to-day basis every day, like at work. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Alina. Thanks for your question. Your interest in your subject sounds really, really cool. I love that you want to go be a marine biologist or an environmental scientist. Actually, something I wanted to do for a little bit when I was thinking about what I wanted to do. Internet went a little bit for me, but I think you asked me what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm a lab-based scientist, and on a day-to-day basis, I work in the lab, either in the physics department of UCL or in the chemical engineering department of UCL. My work is specifically looking at new materials for batteries. So part of that involves synthesis. So it involves things like using big furnaces, which is like a massive oven basically, to try and make different materials, or reacting them in wet chemistry, which is something you might have already done a little bit at, in your education. And then I would then make those into batteries and then test them in chemical engineering. So a lot of it is on my feet. That's one thing I really like. I like not having to sit down all day. I like being on my feet and you know, running around between all these different departments. A lot of it is quite collaborative. So a lot of it is discussing science with other scientists and trying to develop our ideas together. I think another huge thing that I think I enjoy at university and has become part of my day-to-day kind of business is getting involved in outreach and ways of scientific communicating as well. So part of the way I do this is I actually volunteer for People Power. So with them, I've been going to festivals and engaging with the public about science and research. And I think it's important to have a bit of a dialogue as a researcher. And what I really enjoy is actually, rather than standing here and like sort of telling them about my work, I like kind of just saying like, oh, what do you think we should be doing? And what do you think I should be like focusing my research on? And I think there's a lot of value in that. And yeah, I think universities are great places to support you in trying to develop these other skills as well, and definitely helps you build a sense of community.
Brilliant. And Lorenza, if you could now say a few words about yourself and then a specific question to someone.
So hi, I'm Lorenza. I'm 16. I also live in London. Right now I'm doing my A-levels. My favourite subjects are maths and physics. And I'd be interested in studying physics probably, and then going into like sustainable energy or that kind of thing. That's really interesting to me. I had a question for Ed. It is, how important do you think it is for people to reduce the meat consumption in their diet, and how much effect do you think that actually has in reducing climate change?
Yeah, thanks for that, Lorenza. It's a good question. It's a scary one that people don't really want to face. I mean, I eat meat and I eat more than I should, but absolutely reducing meat intake can only be a good thing. There is room for livestock and things like that in a farming environment. There are lots of landscapes where growing veg or something isn't the best use of that land. But yeah, you know, they're a very energy intensive, and there's a lot of emissions involved with meat production. There's an awful lot of, you know, plant-based proteins out there, and there's more coming along all the time. So there's loads that can be done. So yeah, no, it's a really good thing to do. And the other thing to do would be just making sure that the meat that you do eat is of a good quality. Because again, banging the organic drum, but it is a much more extensive and low impact method of producing food of every description. And they have very high welfare standards. So you know that the animal has been treated properly, but also there's been less environmental impact. And it does cost more to produce and it is more expensive, but that's actually quite a good way of reducing your meat intake. If you buy good quality meat, it's more expensive, so by definition you're going to eat a bit less of it. But yeah, absolutely, eating less meat is a really good thing, and it's actually quite a simple thing for people to do.
Thank you, Ed. Time for a couple more questions. So Alina, have you got a question for a different panelist?
Yes, I have a question for Bernie. So how exactly do you promote renewable energy and sustainability to the wider public sector? So do you promote it globally or like regionally in the UK?
Well, right now we just started our Berlin kind of branch. So one of the idea of actually building a community is that, you know, London people come and go. When they go back, they can take the people power mindset and ethos and start building their own communities there. There's a lot of ways to promote renewable energy. I will take actually Becky, one of our most brilliant community members, that she does podcasts, not only around sustainability, but also around science, around gender, you know, like whatever you have in topic, a topic in mind, you can always do an outreach program to make sure that that message is shared with the people. We also have more like hands-on things. So we do go and do workshops of building your own solar panel. You know, it's proper fun. We put music, we actually test them, and we come together. We go to festivals and we have demos about solar panels, DIY wind turbine that people can play with. I'm praising her a lot, but I think Becky came with a Wheel of Fortune game where like kids love it, because we do like questions and they are so excited about seeing if they get it right or wrong, you know, so that it makes it appealing for people. Recently, we have tried to also do more posting in social media, but also better videos, and trying to reach schools and other organizations to be able to share our services with them, and saying like, we think what you have is sustainable. We can help you actually deliver an outreach program to go to other companies, to festivals, wherever is needed. So what we want to do is basically like share the information, but trying to make it a little bit actionable, you know, not only hearing things and let it go, you know, what can I do to have accountability in beating climate change, in having a more sustainable life, whatever you want. Thank you.
Fabulous. And final question from Lorenza.
I've got a question for Joe. You said in your introduction that you saw a sort of gap between people, you know, having a genuine want for reducing the effects of climate change, but then not actually knowing how to do that. What do you think is a good way to bridge that gap?
So that's really what sits at the heart of everything that we do at Giki. So we try to bridge that gap by providing the right information for people at the right time and in the right tone. And we do that through, we've got a free app that tells you all about UK supermarket products, how sustainable, healthy and ethical they are. And we've also got Giki Zero, which is a web app, so you can use it on your phone or on your computer. And that helps you measure and understand your full carbon footprint and also land use and water use, and then shows you over 120 steps that are personalized depending on what your personal situation is, to help you reduce and work towards a net zero lifestyle, which is effectively, you know, or a zero. Over time, we need to get to a zero lifestyle, which is, you know, no carbon emissions, although clearly that will take time. And for us, I think the most important thing about is giving people information that's relevant to them, so that it's no good telling somebody who's vegetarian to eat less red meat. That's totally unhelpful. But if they're vegetarian and they want to go the next stage, then maybe they want to go plant-based. Suggesting people buy more organic food. It is more expensive, but it's much better for the climate. And there's some recent research out actually about the role of organic soils actually playing a really important role in sequestering more carbon. So there's a mass of science that tells us what we should do. It's about making it accessible for everybody and making it personal to them and to their own lifestyle, so that people can then take the steps that are right for them, that fit with their lifestyle and their budget, and hopefully make them feel good and can be life enhancing, I always think.
Thank you, Joe. If I could just now ask each panelist to give a top tip to any young people listening who are thinking of a career in sustainability and what they can do, starting with back to Joe.
Well, the great thing about careers in sustainability is there are loads and loads more than there used to be. So lots of, you know, you can go into policy. Actually, that's one of the most amazing things about environmental issues. You can look at it from an economic perspective, you can look at it from a policy perspective, you can look at it from an engineering perspective, you know, building renewables, building all sorts of technologies that are going to help reduce emissions. You can look at it from a behavior change perspective, a psychological perspective. So whatever your area of interest or skills are, you can usually find an area of sustainability where you can fit them in, you know, whether you're arts or sciences, or enjoy interacting with people, or a happier, you know, working alone. There's so much out there now, and just get experience. Go and badger people, ask them if you can do some work experience, and that's the way to get into it.
Great. And Ed, top tip.
Yeah, I mean, Jo put it really well actually, but you know, really everything has a sustainability impact these days, and you know, moving forwards, ideally you'd see every business, whatever anyone does, bearing in mind sustainability and what they can do to reduce it. So, you know, sort of all walks of life, there are the ability to either introduce or improve sustainability. So, you know, I kind of say if you have a particular general interest, whether it be physics or specifically environmentalism or transport even, there is a sustainable aspect to that, and you can look into that and head down that route. But it's got to interest you.
Fantastic. While we've got you, can you show us your view? Because it's magnificent.
So I'm quite fortunate. So this is my office at the moment in here. It's the back of a van. And yeah, I don't know if you can see that terribly well.
We can.
But yeah, we got some dairy cows in one of the fields that we had veg in last year, sort of making up a rotation. So yeah, quite blessed really.
Very nice, thank you. And Bernie and then Becky.
Well, I totally agree of what has been said, but I would say my top tip would be prepare to be very creative. There's a lot of problem solving that needs to happen, and as like every area can be improved, everything is towards sustainability right now. So just, you know, as of now, start thinking outside the box and make sure that your voice is heard during the trip, during the process.
And finally, Becky.
Hello, I think everyone put it really well. I think I would just add to really, like, I don't know, I guess kind of really challenge yourself, and like if you do things that maybe you feel like you're a little scared about or nervous about, and I think encouraging yourself in that way is like one of the best ways to grow as a person and to grow your skills. And I guess like I just leave it on a bit of a invigorating note is just that one of the most inspiring talks I went to about sustainability and these issues mentioned how we need to like think about combating climate change in the same way we thought about the space race in the 1960s. So really trying to go at it all guns blazing, and really we're trying to achieve something that is unprecedented, like, you know, all of these innovations with farming, with water access, with energy. We're trying to create things that have not been created before because we've been so reliant on carbon for such a long time. So I guess just like everyone else said, be creative, look at like all the different things you can do, follow your interests, and just go forward feeling invigorated about making change.
Great, that is a good final note. And I'm just going to leave the last word to Alina and then Lorenza. Any reflections on what you've heard today?
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for explaining about your jobs. It was really, really interesting. And thank you for all those really, really helpful words that I'll definitely keep in mind in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thanks so much, you guys. You all had really interesting things to say. And I will definitely be looking for work experience now. So thank you.
Amazing. Huge thank you to all our panelists. I know everybody's really, really busy, and for giving up your time and energy to speak to Alina and Lorenza today, and giving young people in general who will be watching this a lot of inspiration. And thank you to Alina and Lorenza, who are members of our London Schools Eco Network, for such insightful questions. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, I'm Lucie and I'm 11. And I live in England in the UK. And I have two brothers, and at school and in English I'm studying Greek mythology. So what can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely, Lucie. My name's Federico. I'm Italian, actually. Then all my life, my parents traveled for work, so I lived abroad. I spent the last 15 years in Brazil. And now, like I said, I am in Miami, Florida during this coronavirus. I'm an environmental scientist, and I work in the Climate Champions, which I can tell you more about. And I am really interested in agriculture and how food and agriculture can help us fight climate change.
That sounds really interesting. So why did you get involved in your current job, and has your job been rewarding?
Yes, absolutely. I was always interested in nature.
Yeah.
I really I still enjoy being outdoors. And then when I was just about your age, and after that, I began understanding that that nature wasn't a given, that it had to be looked after. And that's why I studied environmental science. And I wanted to be a park ranger. And I tried that, but then I understood that the problems affecting nature weren't really nature. They were agriculture, they were business, they were industry. So I started working with that, but always trying to protect nature.
Yeah. So what exactly do you do in your job as an environmental scientist?
Sure. I try to get people and organizations to care about nature. And today, one example, one very big problem, as you know, is climate change, which affects all of us, all of nature. So I'm trying to get NGOs, universities, companies, schools to commit to doing something about it.
How do you feel when you hear the word climate change? Is the UK on track to tackle climate change, do you feel?
I feel the UK is doing an important job. Next year, they're going to host a very important international conference. It's called COP26. And so they will be in the spotlight because it's in the UK, but the meeting is for the whole world. And so I think they're working hard to make it a good event and to make sure that everybody is represented. And I think that's definitely something important to do.
Yeah. How do you feel when you hear the word climate change?
You know, that's a good question. What I always say is that climate change is the natural impact of a human problem. So we are producing it. And it just makes me feel like we really have to change our habits personally. Everybody needs to do their part. And that is the best thing that we can do for nature.
Why do you believe your company / organization is different?
Because it's called a coalition of coalitions. There are many networks, about 16 of them, of universities, companies, banks, all kinds of groups. And together, these coalitions make one big coalition. It's called Race to Zero. And it's about getting everybody to do their part and change the way we see and understand climate change globally.
What are they doing? Your company / organization doing? This is more sustainable.
So we have identified about 12 or 15 areas where change can happen quite fast in terms of getting to something called net zero, which just means that by 2050, we are taking out as much carbon from the atmosphere as we would be putting in. So that might be making sure that all cars are electric, or it might be making sure that buildings are built more efficiently. It might mean that the energy we use is not fossil fuel anymore. And it might also mean that we don't burn our forests or deplete our oceans.
How could others learn?
From what we do?
Yeah.
I think there are so many resources available, especially now online, that everybody is online. You can watch TED Talks. There's a specific part of TED, which is called Countdown, which just looks at climate change. You can look at a lot of amazing reports that are coming out. Unfortunately, those are more for a more grown-up category. I am not aware of a lot of reports for children, and I think that's important to have children learn about this. And most of those reports actually point you in the direction of organizations or groups in your community where you can do something, even if it's doing compost in your garden or joining a group or doing an activity at school like you're doing right now.
What are your company or organization's goals for the next 10 to 20 years?
Sure, it's like I said before, the scientists tell us that in order to have a world that is only 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer on average, which is not good, but it would be the least bad option. We need to get to net zero, as I said before, by 2050. And what that means in numbers is that by 2030, which is only 10 years from now, so you will be 21, emissions need to be reduced by half, which is a lot. And then we need to do that again by 2050. So it's very, very ambitious, and it requires everybody to do their part. So we're trying to build that momentum, it's called, to build that energy in society.
Have you had any opposition to what you do?
Yes, of course. Well, for example, even though I'm not from the United States, right now I live in the United States. And you may have seen in the news that we're having an election, and the two sides are really at loggerheads. They're not agreeing on this. So clearly there's one side of society that is of the opinion that this will go away, that it doesn't have a lot to do with us, that some even say that it's made up. And I guess they're entitled to believe that if they want to, even though the science is very clear. And then there's another side that says that the sooner we do something about it, the better it is in the long run. So the opposition is playing out, and we have to learn how to include everybody and deal with disagreement, but fix the problem.
Have you got any advice for people going into that industry?
Yes, well, do it. Do it quickly, don't wait. I think it's wonderful that young people like yourself are taking interest in this now. It took me a lot longer to get into this industry than what maybe it will take you. and we need smart and committed people, and especially we also need girls and women because they're underrepresented, and we also need people from other origins, other countries, other cultures to do this, because also it's about diversity. It's about the strength that we have when we are many and different.
Yeah, so I'm going to be part of COP26 due to another organisation I work for called iWorld, and it's 50 youths picked from around the UK, anywhere around the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, and 50 are picked each year to be iWorld ambassadors, and I've been picked to be part of this COP26 in organising it.
That's wonderful. And do you know where you want to go with this in the future?
When I'm older, I want to be a marine biologist.
That's wonderful. That's what I wanted to study. And it's amazing. So I think you might be very happy doing it.
Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lucie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lorenza. I'm 16 years old and I'm from London. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Sue Vincent, who is here with us. I'm currently studying for my A-levels, so some of my favourite subjects are maths and physics, and I'd be interested in careers in sort of sustainable energy and renewable energy, which is very fitting today. Sue, I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and say a bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Lorenza. Yeah, my name is Sue Vincent. I've been working in offshore wind almost exclusively for the last 14 years. I'm currently working on one of the world's largest offshore wind farms. It's called Sophia, and it's located at 195 kilometres from the UK coast. So it's really far from shore. I look after the communications and the stakeholder engagement around the project. I have worked on other projects that you may or may not be familiar with. There's one that I worked on called Sheringham Shoal, which is in the Greater Wash, another one off Brighton called Rampion, and I tend to look after the communications and local stakeholders, media, sponsorships, that sort of thing.
Brilliant. So my first question is, how did you first get involved in your current job?
I studied journalism at university, and then I did a master's in business administration. So I was working in public relations, communications for energy companies. I have been sort of my whole career. And then in 2006, an opportunity came up to start working in offshore wind. And I felt that it really fitted with my kind of general ethos about helping, doing something good for the world. And so I've stayed in the sector ever since. And I've been working on my current project, actually on and off for 10 years. That's how long it takes to get a wind farm happening. But we're really entering the final stretch at the moment as we're about to start construction next year.
Perfect. And what do you do for your job on a day-to-day basis?
Every day is different for me. I look after things from inquiries from local communities to I do the website to writing strategies. So every day is different. I deal with media and sponsorships, and it's never boring. English was one of my sort of good subjects at school, so I write. Everything I do kind of has something to do with writing because it's about communicating, but it's a sector that really is crying out for a lot more diversity across the board, particularly with engineers and on the STEM side. So it's great that you're wanting to get into something like that, because I can I can say you'll be welcome with open arms into the sector.
Thank you. So after you mentioned that you have a project that's just coming to an end now. What are your company's sort of next goals for the next, 5 or 10 years?
Well, it's coming to an end of one phase, but it's coming to the start of another phase. So we're actually going to build it. So that is going to take roughly 4 years. But projects go through different phases. So there's development phase, consent, which is sort of the planning, and then there's the construction phase, and then there's the long-term operation and maintenance. So it'll be operational sort of more than 25 years. But the company that owns the main project that I'm working on, it's the world's second largest offshore wind company, and we have a pipeline of projects. So I am working on another project called North Falls, which is going to be off the coast of East Anglia, and we're in very, very early development. We don't really know where the onshore infrastructure will be, and yeah, there's lots of unknowns. So you kind of roll from one project to the next in this sector.
Okay, and when you're sort of deciding where to build offshore wind farms, is there what's the criteria for a good place? Obviously, you'd expect it to have a lot of wind, but what are the other factors?
Needs to be windy, definitely. It's a lot easier if we can make sure it's further from shore so people can't see it. People are much happier if they can't see turbines, so I think they actually look lovely. We have a lot of stakeholders, from fishermen to maritime to onshore with local residents, and so there's a lot of kind of what we call constraints to where we can build them. But first of all, the Crown Estate is the manager of the seabed, and they kind of like the landlord of the seabed, and they will nominate areas where we can look at for development, and then we spend a long time researching that area to see what is there, and how could a wind farm fit in that area.
Okay, and so in terms of the UK's sort of energy mix, how far do you think wind energy can go in powering our cities and houses?
Well, I think the UK is actually a world leader for offshore wind. We have, I'm pretty sure, more installed capacity than anywhere elsewhere. The rest of the world is slowly catching up, but we have strong ambitions still. The Prime Minister recently announced an ambition of 40 gigawatts by 2030. There's times at the moment when I think we supply up to 30% of the UK's power demand at that point in time. And I think once we sort out some kind of more technical innovations, for example, battery storage, then I think the sky's the limit really with offshore wind.
Perfect. And next question is, for now, since the UK does have so much wind energy, is there a way of storing it and then selling it to other countries? Yeah, or is that still in the future?
It's battery technology is really advancing, and I think that will be the next frontier, is storage. Also looking at using a fleet of cars. So if we all have electric vehicles, then that we can all store power. And then when the grid needs it, it can go back into the grid. There's lots of technological advances being made with storage. And then there's also interconnectors. So we interconnect the UK with France and Netherlands and so forth. So we can transmit power between countries. So there's lots of tech. So grid and batteries are the next two areas that I think will really see leaps and bounds with offshore wind.
Okay. And do you think that the UK currently is on track to combat climate change with its sort of energy mix now?
I think the UK is actually doing really well. Obviously, there's always more that can be done. We seem to have a lot more commitment from the top now, and the prices of renewables has come down. And there's the climate change imperative. So I think it's a push and a pull, and I am confident that we're pretty well on track to meet the commitments, but of course you can always do more.
Yeah. So in terms of other energy sources, how well are renewables competing with the fossil fuels like oil and gas and coal? How are they competing cost-wise right now?
Well, interesting you should ask. The project that I'm working on, we won what's called a contract for difference last year at a price of £39.65 a megawatt hour, which is cheaper than the average price of electricity was for the previous 12 months. So we are really, the sector has really dropped the prices significantly in the last few years. It's by 50%. So economically, it makes absolute sense to utilise wind as an energy source.
And how long do you think it will be before we see an entire major city like London or wherever completely powered by wind?
Well, I guess it depends where the wind is coming from. So the project I'm working on at the moment, when it's completed, it will generate enough power to supply roughly 1.2 million British homes per year. So if you combined all the power from offshore wind at the moment, it probably is powering, the equivalent of cities. But as all the power goes into one grid, you can't really differentiate that the power is coming from this source or that source. I think that the UK will see that more and more of its power is coming from renewable sources as time goes on. Yeah.
Perfect. And what do you think that individuals can do to sort of, I don't know, help with the renewable energy sector? Because it is, like you say, it's a lot cheaper than fossil fuels now, but I think most people still have, gas boilers in their homes.
Yeah, I think climate change is it's a global responsibility and an individual responsibility. So people can look at their own actions, even just turning off lights. I tell my daughters all the time, can you turn the lights off? And they think I'm being tight because it's about the bills, but actually it's just being aware of your own actions. And then when you have choices to make them in a considered way. So then I think everyone can do a little bit with their own footprint, but obviously on a grander scale, it's just up to people to start working in the sector actually. So it's over to you.
Thank you. And my last question is, do you have any advice for people, especially young people, who are looking to go into the sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really fascinating sector. It's growing. There's a lot of opportunities. Follow what you enjoy doing. If you enjoy sciences, then great. But if you enjoy other topics like English or art, then there's still opportunities. And you can feel it's kind of a sector where you can feel that you are contributing to the greater good, which I think is a big motivator.
Well, thank you very much for all of your interesting answers to my questions. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aadarsh. I'm 16 years old. I live in London. I'm studying biology, chemistry, maths, and German at A level, and I'm looking to become a vet in the future.
Hi, I'm Andra. I'm 17 years old. I live in Belfast. I study biology, chemistry, geography, and French, so quite a mixed bag. And I'm looking into kind of a mixture of careers, so potentially biochemistry, environmental policy, or science communications.
So Jenny, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Jenny Hughes. I work for a company called Stantec. We are a development and infrastructure consultancy, and I can explain a little bit more about what that means. And I'm really excited to have taken a new role recently in our company. And my role is to be a climate change and social value manager. So really what that means is I am helping drive our company towards net zero carbon and really helping to prioritize how we're delivering benefits to communities through our projects. So that could be a project like a new community that we're designing, delivering and building, or it could be a renewable energy scheme like an offshore wind project, or it could even be something like a road scheme or something like that. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavour of what I do.
Andy, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure, Andra. Yeah, my name's Andy and I'm a teacher, a primary school teacher from Australia originally, but I'm currently living in Bali in Indonesia. I teach at the Green School in Bali, which is a sustainably focused P to 12 school here in Bali. As you can probably tell, it's the middle of it's the early evening. It feels like the middle of the night sometimes here in Bali. The sun goes down so quickly. And I've spent a day at school today teaching grade 5s, which is my current focus. And I also teach online classes as well to some kids who can't make it over to Bali just yet. And yeah, I've been there for a year and a half. Prior to that, I was teaching in Australia and at some other places in the world. And I'm having a great time here.
So Jenny, did you find yourself at Stantec working in the environmental sector, or did you always want to work to protect the environment?
That's a really good question. It's something I was reflecting on recently. I should probably also say I'm originally from Scotland and I'm based down in England. So yeah, I work in Bristol, but in the current times, lots of us are working from home. So did I always want to do this? No, I didn't. I actually did. I went to university to study geography. I had a twisty-turny journey into even doing that. I had lots of things I wanted to do. But one thing, I was always really interested and quite passionate about climate change. And I realized that when I was clearing out some of my school stuff recently, and I came across an essay I wrote when I was like 16. So yeah, I suppose it's always been an interest of mine. But my route into this job was not necessarily direct, and I had no idea I'd end up here.
So Andy, as a teacher, how important do you think climate education is for young people and the general public, seeing we're kind of in the midst of a climate and ecological emergency?
Yeah, Andra, well, I guess it can't really be overstated how important it is, but I think it's gone beyond that now. And I think everyone knows how important it is, but it's that sort of moment now where we can act or not act, and not just act for sustainability, but, you know, take that next step and say, what can we do to sort of regenerate? And I guess I'm lucky in that I'm working with little kids who are little sponges and hang off every word that you say. And, you know, but it comes with a lot of responsibility, and I sometimes feel that I don't do enough in my day-to-day, but it's kind of good to drive yourself that way, thinking you're not quite doing enough each day, and just strive a little harder the next day. And I hope that that the kids that I'm teaching and maybe some of the other ones that are around the world are taking a bit in, but also I don't just expect them to be the ones that are doing it. It's really got to be me, and it's got to be my parents, and it's got to be their parents. So, you know, we're all in it together and doing our own little bit as much as we can.
Thank you. And Jenny, you were talking about having a net zero target for your company. How are you planning to be even more environmentally, socially, and more environmentally friendly?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, we're setting ourselves a target to be net zero by 2025 if we can. And there's lots of different ways we need to achieve that. So I was actually just talking about that earlier with some of our graduates, and one way is all about reducing our energy. We need to look at our offices and what buildings we're using, and think about how we can be much more efficient. We need to put in place better measures to encourage our staff to travel sustainably. We already support them, but I think there's a lot more that we can do. And generally, we're just hoping to sort of change our culture a bit. We've got some really, really enthusiastic volunteers and people that we call champions, but we want to make sure that's consistent. So we might have some people in some offices who are driving change, but we want to make sure that that happens right across our business. So yeah, we're putting in place ways in which we can do that.
Andy, so what do you see for the future of the Green School and its impact on the environment? Do you see other schools similar to it being set up in other places?
Yeah, great question, Aadarsh. Yeah, it's well, Green School is becoming a more global entity now. There's a couple of schools opening up around the world. New Zealand's, I think, just about to open or has opened, and there's a few other places around the world where it's starting to spread. And I think, you know, it's kind of this style of teaching and learning is kind of not just the kind of in thing, but it's the only thing really that's going to work. And I think people are starting to realise that not only is it kind of like so important, but it's also the most fun way of doing things, because you actually feel like you're doing something right and doing the right thing, you know, by everyone. And it's funny what Jenny was just saying then about creating a culture. It's when I came to this school, like the culture is just a little bit of motorcycle competition here. The culture at this school is it's just through the whole staff and student body and families. And so, yeah, I was just hearing what Jenny was saying about creating a culture. This place has created that culture, and it's, you know, if you don't bring your recycling to the school's recycling centre, you kind of feel like you're maybe not pulling weight. And if you don't, you know, think about ways of getting to school in a more sustainable way, you kind of feel like you're on the outside. And I've been at schools where it hasn't been like that, and you feel like you're trying to push uphill a little bit. And so, yeah, this place has kind of got that. So I'm hoping that, Aadarsh, that might be something that other schools might be able to sort of get to that point where they've created that culture and it's got momentum.
Yeah. And if you had one sort of tip for young people interested in the environment?
Yeah, man. I guess it's finding what you really like and then working that into how you can help the planet, if you want to put it that way. So, I mean, I've got plenty of interests that are not sustainable. You know, like I love football, and I love, you know, hip hop, and I like eating fast food. But if you can kind of think of ways that turn those possible problems, I guess, into solutions, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Not necessarily saying, I should ride my bike every day to school or work, and you know, you don't like riding a bike. Maybe think of a way of doing something that you really like doing, and use that passion to incrementally change your life.
And Jenny, if you had one tip for young people?
Don't know if I can top Andy's top tip. I think what I'd say is don't be afraid to reach out and speak to lots of different people. I think it's really difficult. I found it really difficult myself, think about what I wanted to do. And I could still arguably say I don't know what I want to do in the long term in my career. But I think you can take the opportunities that are in front of you, and you can always use those as you go forward. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak to people. Everyone is really interested and passionate about helping young people. And I think, that's really important to not forget that.
Thank you.
So Jenny, you were saying that you visited Green School?
I thought it was such an incredible place. My company let me take a sabbatical a few years ago, and I decided to go and do some traveling and volunteering. So I did a bit of volunteering on Nusa Penida, and then came to the Green School for a day, and loved it. Thought it was incredible.
Did it have much impact on you when you came back from that?
I'd say it's kind of been very much in the background of my mind, because as a company, we do a lot of outreach to schools and educational programs and things like that. But I think now's the time to make sure we're actually building in sort of more environmental and climate change emphasis through that. And I don't know about you, Aadarsh or Andra, but I feel like that is quite lacking in the UK at the moment in terms of the curriculum, and could be massively improved.
I totally agree. I think there is such a big emphasis on STEM subjects, and kind of going into a STEM job where environmental jobs and the advertisement of that is not exactly, there isn't much emphasis put on that. And I'm working with Ulster Wildlife here to kind of get climate education and green jobs in schools, and it's a really exciting project, and hopefully that's gonna mean that more young people are going to be more connected with nature, because that connection has kind of broken. Seeing technology is so, it's kind of addictive, I want to say. So there was a fact, actually, when we were researching for kind of putting together our key asks for the government, we came across a fact that actually young people spend less time outside than prisoners, which was absolutely insane. I mean,
it's mad.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, Andra, because, and I know Aadarsh, one of your questions before touched on it, that, yeah, like, I know when I was your age, I didn't, I had passions and all that sort of stuff, but I was sort of thinking, oh, I have all these pressures to do various things from various ways, and what I think, counts, but what my family thinks or whatever. But it's absolutely fine, in fact, possibly even better, to get into jobs that have very little environmental focus, and be that person that, like Jenny's doing, be that person that brings it. And, once you can get into a bit of a bubble sometimes, and I know I am, in my world here in Bali, you feel like you're doing a great job, but it's very much a bubble. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, oh man, I really should step out a bit and, see what the real world's doing, because I need to sort of pass the message through or act in that area. And so looking at positions that seemingly have no environmental aspect, or it's down the priority list, probably has more impact than going into maybe a more cliched environmental focused job.
I think that's a really good point. There's lots of different ways of affecting change and having an impact. So, and it doesn't always have to be through your day job as well. It can be through what else you do.
So true.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think you're right in terms of, you have to, at some point, there's going to be pioneers in each kind of field which take an environmental spin on something that seemingly has nothing to do with it. And given the fact that we're in the midst of an environmental crisis that has to happen, in almost every aspect of our lives, I feel like we need to be more environmental. But I think whatever you're doing, if you find a way to be environmental about it, whether you're teaching at a green school, which is amazing, or working at a big company like Stantec as well, both of you are having a massive impact in terms of the environment, which is just amazing to see for us young people. Yeah.
Same with you guys. Like, as I was mentioning earlier before the interview, it's just so awesome to see you guys doing what you're doing at your age. And, I'm sure that, kids like Greta have had an impact on people like you. But it makes me feel it gives me a sense of optimism that there is hope. And, not putting any pressure on you guys, but thank you so much for what you're doing, and keep it up. And when when you're our age and we're old and grey, we'll be patting you on the back and trying to support you as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Makes me feel hopeful.
Thank you. Well, it makes us feel hopeful that you guys are doing, you're going through these jobs that most of the time don't have anything to do with the environment. And
so just reflecting on what our two panelists have said there, I think the thing that I would take from this talk is that to have that drive to work towards the environment, you don't have to go into a really specific job. You can find what you love, like Jenny and Andy have said, and use that to help the environment. So I think that's what I'm taking from this talk.
Yes, I completely agree with you. No matter what job you go, I guess that's what I'm taking from it as well. No matter what job you go into, there will always, you'll always have to care for the environment and ensure that the impact, that you have a positive impact on the environment in whatever you do. So yes, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this. It's been really useful and really helpful, and hopefully young people who are watching this will realize what we've talked about, that you don't need to go into specifically an environmental job to be able to actually make a difference.
Yes, spot on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.